Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. This time we're tackling a topic that's really a big deal for employers right now.
Yeah.
Employee retention. We're really going to zero in on those pain points that employers feel when skilled workers decide it's time to move on.
Right.
And especially we're going to kind of look at that from the perspective of smaller businesses, too.
Yeah. It's a huge issue for businesses of all sizes, but particularly those small to medium-sized businesses, it can really make or break them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
To help us kind of break this down, we've got some really interesting excerpts from an article on peoplekeep.com. It's called Employee Retention, the Real Cost of Losing an Employee.
Hmm.
And they really dive deep into the problem itself, the costs, and then even offer up some potential solutions. So
Yeah.
some of the stats we're going to be looking at might be a little eye-opening.
Yeah, for sure.
But stick with us because I think there are some really valuable insights here.
Definitely. It's definitely important for employers to kind of wrap their heads around this issue. So maybe we should start by defining exactly what we mean by employee turnover.
Yeah, good point.
It's basically any time an employee leaves a company, whether it's voluntarily or involuntarily, like a termination.
Right.
But I think the one that really gives employers a headache is that voluntary turnover.
Of course.
When people are choosing to leave.
Yeah, because when someone's choosing to leave, it often means they're leaving for something better.
Right, exactly.
And that kind of says something about where they're leaving, right?
Exactly. And, we've been seeing a lot of that recently, haven't we?
Oh, absolutely.
The whole Great Resignation thing, people kind of reevaluating their careers and priorities, that's still having a huge impact.
Yeah.
Just to give you an idea, in February 2024 alone, 3.5 million people voluntarily quit their jobs.
Wow.
It's a pretty staggering number, and it really underscores the importance of focusing on retention strategies.
3.5 million. That's huge.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about kind of the trends in the big picture, but let's zoom in a little bit. What happens to the employer, like on the ground level, when a key employee decides to walk out the door?
Well, think of it this way. It's like a domino effect.
Okay.
That first domino that falls is decreased productivity. You've got fewer team members, and oftentimes the remaining employees are left to kind of pick up the slack, right?
Yeah.
So they get stretched thin, they feel overwhelmed, potentially burned out.
And then that leads to more.
And then that leads to even lower productivity. It's this kind of vicious cycle.
Yeah, and that lower productivity, of course, translates into, dollars and cents.
Absolutely.
I mean, time is money, and if things aren't getting done.
You said it. That's exactly right. And actually, there was a HubSpot report that estimated U.S. businesses lose something like $1.8 trillion annually just from decreased productivity.
Wow.
That number alone should be a serious wake-up call for employers, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's not even just about the financial side of things.
Yeah.
There's this quote from Chris Estrada. He's the CEO of Nationwide United Auto Transport.
Okay.
And I think he puts it really well. He says, when an essential team member departs, it's not just the intimate knowledge of our workflow we lose. We also face a decrease in productivity and employee morale until a fitting replacement is found.
Right, so it's not just about the work not getting done. It's about the impact that absence has on everyone else.
The whole team.
Yeah, the whole team dynamic shifts and morale takes a hit. And sometimes those are things that are really hard to bounce back from.
They really are. And think about it. Workplace friendships are a big part of why people enjoy coming to work, right?
Right.
So when someone leaves, especially if it's a well-liked colleague, it disrupts those bonds.
Absolutely.
And it can make other people start to question their own reasons for staying. It just creates this sense of uncertainty and unease that can kind of permeate the whole organization.
And then if you've got one or two people deciding to follow suit, all of a sudden it's a much bigger issue.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got the domino effect on productivity. We've got the hit to morale.
Yeah.
Let's talk about like the cold, hard cash here.
Okay.
What's the real financial burden? Because replacing an employee is not cheap.
It's way more expensive than many companies realize. Josh Burson from Deloitte breaks it down into a few different categories.
Okay.
First, you've got those direct costs, like recruitment and onboarding.
Right.
So you're talking about advertising the position, screening resumes, interviewing candidates, training the new hires.
Right.
It all adds up.
And then there's the time it takes to get the new employee up to speed.
Oh, yeah.
It's not like they're going to be as productive as the person they replaced right away.
Right. It can take a year or two for a new employee to reach that same level of efficiency as the person they're replacing.
Wow.
And during that time, the company is basically operating at a loss when it comes to that employee's output.
Right.
So those are what we call the indirect costs.
Okay, so we've got the cost of finding them, the cost of training them, the cost of them not being fully productive for potentially years.
Right.
It sounds like there's even more to it than that, though.
There are those hidden costs,
Okay.
things that are a little harder to quantify, but they're just as significant.
Like what?
You might see decreased engagement from the remaining employees.
Okay.
There's the potential for customer service errors with those inexperienced staff.
Yeah.
Loss of institutional knowledge when somebody with years of experience walks out the door.
Right.
All of these things can really slowly drain your resources and impact your bottom line.
And I imagine a lot of organizations probably aren't equipped to really keep track of those hidden costs.
No, they're not.
So they might not even realize the full impact that employee turnover is having.
Exactly. It can be kind of a silent drain on their profits.
Right. So how much are we talking about? Like, what's the actual financial burden here?
Well, reports estimate that the average cost to replace an employee can range anywhere from 1 to 2 times their annual salary.
Wow.
And that's just an average. If you're talking about highly skilled or specialized roles like leadership positions, it can get astronomically higher.
Yeah, I bet.
We're talking 100 to 150% of their salary. And for C-suite roles, it can go up to 213%.
Gosh, it really puts things in perspective when you see it laid out like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about the domino effect, the financial drain, but like, what's at the heart of it all?
Yeah.
Why are employees choosing to leave in the first place?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's the one employers need to be asking themselves constantly.
For sure.
We'll dive into the reasons behind those departures when we come back.
Welcome back. So before the break, we were talking about like just how expensive it can be for employers when skilled workers decide to head for the exit.
Yeah, it's a real eye-opener for a lot of companies when they start to add up all those costs.
Yeah, and it makes you realize it's not just about like filling the empty spot.
Right.
It's about understanding why that spot is empty in the first place.
Exactly. You have to get to the root of the problem. And one of the most common reasons we see is this lack of growth or career development opportunities. People want to feel like they're moving forward in their careers, they're learning new skills, they're advancing. And if they don't see that potential within their current company, they're going to start looking elsewhere.
Yeah, makes sense.
Right.
And it's not just about climbing the ladder anymore, right?
No, not at all.
It's about feeling challenged,
Yeah.
having a sense of purpose in the work that they're doing.
Absolutely. It's about finding meaning in their work and feeling like they're making a real contribution.
Right, and feeling like their skills are valued and being developed.
For sure. And we see that a lot with younger generations especially. They really prioritize those things.
And that kind of ties into another big one, right?
Yeah.
Employee engagement.
Huge, huge factor. If people are feeling bored or underutilized or unappreciated, they're much more likely to be looking for the exit.
Yeah, I've heard that called like quiet quitting,
Oh, yeah.
where they're there, but they're not really there.
Exactly. They're just going through the motions, putting in their time, but they don't feel any real connection to their work or to the company.
Right, it's like their heart just isn't in it.
Right. And then, of course, you have things like company culture. If the culture is toxic or even just generally negative, that can be a huge driver of turnover.
And nobody wants to go to work and dread being there, right?
Of course not. People want to work in an environment where they feel respected and supported, valued. A negative or dysfunctional workplace can be incredibly draining. It can make even the most dedicated employees start to question whether it's worth it.
Absolutely. And then, of course, there's always the money question.
Yeah, compensation and benefits.
I know it's not always the primary motivator,
Yep.
but it has to be competitive.
Right, it has to be.
People need to feel like they're being paid fairly for their skills and experience, and benefits play a huge role too,
Oh, absolutely.
especially things like healthcare, paid time off, family leave.
Those are essentials nowadays.
Yeah, those are essentials.
And those needs and priorities can change over time as well, right?
Right.
What might have been super appealing to a recent graduate might not be as important to someone who's further along in their career or has a family to support.
Right. It's about staying kind of attuned to what matters most to your employees at each stage.
Exactly.
What about conflict? Like conflict with colleagues or bad management?
Oh, yeah, that can definitely play a role. Nobody wants to dread coming to work because they have to deal with a difficult boss or a toxic coworker.
Mm-hmm.
A healthy and respectful work environment is absolutely essential.
So it's not just about avoiding those negative situations.
Yeah.
It's about creating a positive and supportive environment.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where leadership comes in. They play a huge role in shaping that company culture.
For-
And a lack of clear direction from the top down, that can be really demotivating for employees.
Yeah.
People want to feel like they're a part of something bigger than themselves. They want to be working towards a common goal. If that vision is missing, they might lose motivation and start looking for a company that aligns better with their values.
So it's about more than just having a good product or service or whatever.
It's about the whole package.
It's about the whole package, the whole experience.
The employee experience, yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting how all these factors are kind of interconnected, right?
They really are.
It's not about just fixing one problem in isolation.
Nope.
It's about creating this kind of holistic work environment that addresses the needs and aspirations of employees at every level.
You got it. And that might sound like a tall order, but there are some proven strategies that companies can use to make a real difference.
So what can employers actually do? Like, where do they start?
Well, the first step is understanding your ideal employee profile. Really being clear about what skills, what experience, what personality traits are going to be essential for success in the roles you need to fill.
So it's not just about filling a vacancy, it's about finding the right fit
Exactly.
for your company culture and the specific demands of the job.
Right. And then once you have the right people in the door, you need to focus on keeping them engaged and motivated.
How do you do that?
Well, the People Keep article emphasizes the importance of setting clear expectations and goals,
Okay.
providing structured feedback, and offering genuine opportunities for career growth.
So people need to know what's expected of them, how their work contributes to the bigger picture,
Right.
and that there's a path for them to grow and develop within the company.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of a positive and supportive company culture. It's about creating a workplace where people feel respected, valued, appreciated for their contributions. It's about fostering open communication, encouraging teamwork, and addressing conflict in a way that's fair and constructive.
So it's about going deeper than just like the superficial perks.
Yeah, definitely.
The ping pong tables and the free snacks.
Exactly. It's about addressing the deeper needs of your employees.
Right. But those little gestures of appreciation can still go a long way.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Recognition is so important, and it doesn't have to be anything elaborate or expensive.
Right.
A simple thank you, a handwritten note, public acknowledgement of a job well done. Those things can make a huge difference in how valued an employee feels.
Yeah, it shows that you're paying attention and that you appreciate their hard work and that you see them as a person,
Right.
not just like a cog in the machine.
Exactly.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been talking a lot about what employers can do to create a more positive and supportive workplace.
Yeah.
But it makes me think about this idea of communication. Like, it's one thing to assume everything's going well,
Right.
but how do employers really know how their employees are feeling?
That's a really important point. A lot of employers operate under this assumption that no news is good news.
Right, out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly. But silence doesn't necessarily equal satisfaction.
Right.
By the time an employee is actually handing in their resignation, it might be too late to actually salvage the situation.
Yeah, that ship has sailed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how do you shift from being reactive to proactive when it comes to understanding employee sentiment?
Yeah. How do you actually get ahead of the curve on this?
It all starts with creating a culture of open and honest communication.
Okay.
Making it safe for employees to share their thoughts and concerns, both the good and the bad,
Okay.
without fear of any kind of repercussions.
That sounds great in theory, but how do you actually do that? How do you create that kind of environment?
Well, it's about building trust and demonstrating that you genuinely value that employee feedback.
Okay.
So things like regular check-ins, performance reviews, where there's actual two-way dialogue,
Right.
even something as simple as an anonymous suggestion box can provide some really valuable insights into what's working, what needs to be improved.
Right. It's not just about getting that feedback.
No.
It's about doing something with it.
Exactly. Employees need to see that their voices are actually being heard and that their concerns are taken seriously.
Otherwise, they're going to stop giving that feedback.
Oh, absolutely. It has to be a two-way street.
Right.
And, one tool that I think is particularly powerful is the stay interview.
Oh, yeah. I've heard about those.
Have you?
Yeah. But I'd love to hear more about kind of how they work and why they're so effective.
Well, the concept is pretty simple. Instead of waiting until an employee is walking out the door to ask them why they're leaving,
Right.
you proactively sit down with your current employees
Okay.
and ask them what would make them stay.
Interesting.
What are they enjoying about their work? What are some of the challenges that they're facing? What could the company do to better support their needs and goals?
Yeah, it's really shifting the perspective.
Exactly. It shows
Yeah.
that you value their input, that you're invested in their growth and development, and that you're willing to make changes to improve their experience.
Yeah, and it could also just be really good for morale, too.
Oh, for sure. And the insights you gain from those conversations can be invaluable.
Right.
You might uncover issues you weren't even aware of,
Right.
which gives you the opportunity to address them before they escalate into bigger problems or even lead to turnover.
It's like preventative maintenance for your workforce.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, catching those little things before they become big things.
Exactly. And even in cases where an employee ultimately decides to move on, conducting exit interviews can still be super helpful.
Oh, for sure. To kind of understand why they're leaving.
Yeah, to get that perspective.
And see if there are any kind of systemic issues maybe that are contributing to turnover.
Right. It's about turning those departures into learning experiences and using that feedback to continuously refine your retention strategies.
So it's not a one-and-done solution.
Yep.
It's an ongoing process.
It's a journey. Employee retention is a journey, not a destination.
Right. It's about always looking for ways to improve and create a workplace where people genuinely feel valued and supported.
Yeah, a workplace where they can thrive.
Absolutely. Well, I think this has been a really eye-opening conversation. Is there like one key takeaway that you really want our listeners to walk away with today?
I'd say this employee retention isn't just about reducing costs, it's about investing in the future of your company.
Because those happy and engaged employees, they're the heart of any successful business, right?
Absolutely.
They're the ones who are driving innovation, building those strong client relationships, and really creating that positive company culture.
Yeah, it's a virtuous cycle where everyone wins.
Exactly.
Hmm.
So for all of our listeners out there, think about what we've talked about today and how you can apply these insights to your own workplace or even your own career decisions.
That's right.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into employee retention.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you found it valuable. And until next time, keep diving.